Hello, everybody. It's time to start. It's a smaller turnout than maybe we would have liked. Hello, back there.
Well, we filled all the seats. This is good. Everybody's comfortable.
So it's going to be pretty informal, casual evening. I think we're just going to talk. I have some like semblance of a plan, but we can totally throw this out the window if we want. So the topic of this evening is 360-degree cinema, and obviously we can expand that as we would like. And so maybe I'll do some introductions first. I'll start with myself. Mike Wozniewski. I run a game VR interactive media company here in Victoria called HoloLabs, which actually started in Montreal. And so I'll tell you a couple of the projects actually prior to moving here to Montreal. And mostly I come at VR and 360 from, I came at it from audio many years ago. And I can show some, should we do like just a 2-minute kind of like intro?
Yeah, I think it's great.
I'll take a couple minutes and then, so I'll just click on a couple. So I started in sort of R&D world. Sorry, you guys can't even see this.
That's okay. I was going to say, I get like an intro extra.
I got a slide for you. One slide.
I'm
just so where we were working in virtual environments and virtual spaces, and mostly in the world of audio and spatializing sound and making sounds move around in 3D space. And so that was my research career in 2003 to 2007 or so. And then I moved on to a place called the Society for Arts and Technology in Montreal, also known as the SAT. And we started working a lot on immersive projection and displaying 3D imagery and sound in larger spaces. So this was before really headsets became popularized. And so there were projects with floor walls and big long walls, and this is what we call a panoscope, which is basically for one person. You sit in the middle, and we had all sorts of VR experiences and telepresence experiences where you could connect to different locations and talk to each other from within these things. And then we moved on to making this thing called the Satosphere, which is this large dome that had a capacity of about 200 people could fit in it standing, and it was driven with 8 projectors, and there was sound like there was 151 loudspeakers on the inside, and so this is like an interesting sort of future cinema maybe for these kind of 360 experiences, although now most of the time we experience these in headsets. And after that, went into making mobile video games, and recently we've also been doing some VR projects on the side. We're working on a project that is right now on hold with the National Film Board Canada. It's a VR experience of neuroscience, so we go into the brain. And so now let me introduce Chris Beddick. So Chris, let's see, how's that slide?
Time for a picture update.
So I'll read a couple sentences. Maybe you can. So Chris is a cinematographer, immersive content creator, developer of 360 cameras, and founder of Perspective Films. Right? That's what does it say? Films up there. And I can show you a couple of his works if you would like me to, and the 360 experience and VR World. And also I have something here called a new project that you started in November, December, teaching
Yes.
a master class or something like that. So I have, here we go.
It's an Emily Carr. Long story short, Emily Carr, university, and I'm with a union called 669 IATSE. The cinematographers and camera guys. We just somehow connected and said, let's start bringing teaching for 360 in the Vancouver area. So I just kind of popped out of nowhere, and then also in January came in for the class teaching a little bit about it. So the idea is that it provides workshops across Canada and an online course, so if anybody's interested. It's sort of the entry level of 360, so no one's ever done it before and is interested, sort of geared towards that idea. Yeah, I think there's a lot of thirst for knowledge and people who have the experience. There's a lot of people who are willing to share that. So I think as a community, it'd be good to continue. From what I know from the media, Vancouver area has garnered the VR hub of Canada. I don't know if that's just the media creating it, or if that might be some maybe CVR. I'm not. I think that might have a lot to do with it, but I'm not really sure. Anyway, somehow we got that reputation, which I think can easily shift either way. I just want to make sure that we can sort of be as cutting edge and as be really good storytellers as much as possible. Learn as much as we can about it as a community as a whole. I think there's a lot of people who are hungry for it.
So is there anything else that you want to fill in on your background or anything like that? Or
I think that's, yeah.
okay. So Jason McNaughton, right, is the founder of This Is Me in VR, which specializes in innovative content capture for VR viewing and immersive marketing telepresence. And so Jason writes, speaks, consults, and records or live streams 360 VR. That's one of the services he offers. He's got a whole web portal with a whole bunch of different experiences that you can load. You countless videos of 360 videos. Do you want to
Yeah.
add anything?
Hi everybody, how are you? Thanks for coming out. Has everybody here seen 360 videos?
Yes.
Everybody knows what we're even talking about? That's fantastic. I started out doing a 5-year research project on understanding how environments can change a person. And when virtual reality arrived, suddenly it created 2 awesome tools for explaining to others how all of this stuff works and for creating those environments myself. So as an innovator, what I did is I rushed out right away and got a whole bunch of 360 camera equipment, and I've been, as rapidly as possible, capturing as much content as I can to learn through feedback how to film in 360 and what the rules are for this whole new medium. So for about a year now, I've been running some 360 VR monthly meetups, lessons on how to film and record in 360, how to live stream, how to send messages with it, how to make short narrative films. And I've been capturing cities and adventures and wildlife across the country for about a year. There's, I think, 300 videos on our site right now. They're all various experiences you can experience in VR. And we've just started capturing local businesses so that people can visit those businesses in VR. We've been making some marketing material, and really, it's still early in the industry, so spending a lot of time just trying to get the word out. It's a really exciting time, though.
We'll take a look at some videos.
Yeah, I've got a few funny ones that if you guys are interested in trying them out, like getting licked by a 60-foot puppy or being shrunken down, or being under the ocean with Mike. We went and filmed some salmon in Camel River, so you can be underwater. We whipped together an underwater rig, and
They
so
swim right at you.
yeah. So I've been specializing in the experimentation so that you can find out what works and what doesn't work, so that I can better help the film industry advance the content, but making it less nauseating and unpleasant for the viewer.
Not mine.
No.
So Mike Irvin is here to dazzle us with crazy places that we might be able to travel to in 360. And so he's the creative director of the Fisheye Project, and the creator of live underwater interactive cinema for giant screen industry, and has a whole bunch of projects kind of percolating in the use of 360 for traveling to crazy places. And so I think that's going to be one of the topics tonight, because I guess all three of you have, I think, a running theme of going to new places and exploring new things and offering that opportunity to your viewers. So maybe on that note, I don't know which one to show. Oh,
Sorry,
I
I
was
still do
supposed-
my 2 minutes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, and I'm
No, it's
glad
okay.
to, I realized that I'm still on Chris's slide, so there, for example,
Ah,
is, so for your 2 minutes, here you go.
yeah. So, hi everybody. Something that's been really interesting the last couple of years, I've been working on actually a project the last 7 years, bringing diving to the rest of the public. And what we've found in the last while is that there's a very small group of people in the world actually know much about what's going on under the water. And the fact that it covers the majority of our planet's surface, we think that we know a little bit more about it. It's something that we don't really touch on in our education system. So I went and I worked on a master's in curriculum instruction at the University of Victoria. And I ended up defending my thesis live from underwater to kind of prove everything that what my research was saying anyways. And it's been an interesting transition because what we found is, the fundamentals of this is inquiry-based learning. It's really about getting people to interact and engage. So inquiry, by definition, is the exploration and discovery of the natural and material world. It is literally how we come to understand and know everything around us, how we come to interpret it. What's interesting about 360 video and virtual reality is it's an enhancement of that. So what we do in live, in a two-dimensional format, is that we take you there without ever going there. And what's interesting is that it sparks a series of conversations and is very effective in education and experiential learning medium. So if you start to match that with 360, now you get a lot more movement and interactivity. So what's interesting about that is, for instance, we did a dive off of Ogden Point and we were looking at the kelp forest. If you were able to, during that experience, actually be able to turn and look around you and see exactly what the diver was looking at the entire time, that's next level. It's literally the epitome of go diving without getting wet. So it's been an interesting experimentation over the last while, working with Jason and a few others on bringing that extra spatial awareness and that ability to be that kind of immersed into your natural environments. So you may see us very soon this summer in the Arctic, actually doing Canada's 150th anniversary. We'll be broadcasting live with Students on Ice, which is the flagship event. So we'll be able to show you an environment which most of you may never see in your entire lifetime, but this is an opportunity for you to see it. It's an opportunity for you to engage with us and other educators, scientists, and other groups that are going to be up there. This is kind of a really interesting meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question about the medium.
Sure.
And so in film, this is like a film festival, right? So film took years and years, decades probably to like sort of find its format. I don't know if I can use that word, but the prime format for film might be your 2-hour full-length motion film, right?
Yeah.
And so it seems like even though we're talking about 360 cinema and filming things, I think there's a lot of preconceived notions as to how you film and what like composition means and all that sort of stuff, or even what the right use of it is. Because that film might not be the best format for teaching for education. What do you call it?
No, I think
Situated learning or something.
experiential.
Experiential learning.
Yeah.
Experiential learning. Whereas VR 360 might be. So I don't know if you guys have any comments about that. But,
Can I take this?
Sure.
I would say that you're absolutely right. The film industry is going to be a little bit slow in learning the rules for this particular media because it uses a lot of similar techniques, tripods with cameras, but it definitely has some different rules to it as well. So standard behavioral practices for changing between scenes or showing the viewer what's behind the scenes, or even how to transition from one scene to another. Those are all drastically different rules in VR because you're no longer able to just do a swipe. You're having an experience for the viewer. The viewer is teleporting from one location to another. So the rules are very, very different. And the first thing we learned is if you start out with a preconceived notion of how to make a standard film, it really doesn't apply. So right now it's kind of this wild west of experimentation to see what works and what doesn't. And there's a huge variety of types of content. For example, what you're talking about in the Antarctic is bringing the camera to a person, or to a location where a person maybe wouldn't want to go, which is fantastic. So, on the edge of a volcano or hanging from.
Yeah, it's like you don't need to actually go there, but you want to see it.
So that eliminates the risk element of, or the travel cost and the fuel cost of getting to those types of locations.
I imagine the value of that experience is different as well. Like the value of a 2-hour film is more in the storytelling and like that, whereas this is more about the experience of being there.
Well, you have the variety because you can either make it an interactive experience, a passive experience. You can have them be there where they're viewing the event, or you can actually have them where they're partially interacting and partially viewing. So, for example, if they are portrayed at the beginning as, let's say, a bird. I know that sounds a little unusual, but this is kind of what this medium does. Early on in the scene, if you place a mirror so that the viewer is able to look over at a mirror and their reflection is of something like a bird, then they spend that 360 experience feeling like, so you can do things like transition from scene to scene by navigating the camera, but the viewer feels that they are a bird, so it justifies the movement. There's a variety of different things that you can do to have that effect, and they're all just kind of being experimented with.
There was a cool thing I heard. Bring your traditional tools to set, but expect to leave them
At the door.
at the door.
Yeah.
Idea. It is. I also like to use the analogy that our brain's a hard drive, and all that information we have too is as filmmaker. You kind of just every now and then you got to turn them off and go, who am I in this experience? And so it leads to the question of, are you a bird? Are you? So if you're a bird, are you? And you're riding a jeep in the desert, are you really a bird that's sitting on? Because
Yeah.
there's been a lot of experimentation over the years, so everyone's trying out new things, and I'm one of those guys. I'm going to put a camera anywhere, and then once you start to understand the medium a little bit better and realize it is about an experience that you are either watching or part of. And right now, 360, you're passive on the most part, unless you're true virtual reality where you're interactive and changing the story.
No, we've been using 360 captures and making them interactive, so you can interact within the spaces or within the different 360 content, based like gaze-based navigation. Things like that.
So as a filmmaker, you literally have to turn off your filmmaking experience. And learn
Partially,
a whole
yes.
new
Yeah,
The
way.
reality is a lot
Bring
of
it to a box.
There's no cameraman, there's no director, there's no microphone, there's no boom guy.
Yeah.
That camera right there is currently recording in live 360.
Yeah.
Sorry, not live, just recording. But what you have to do when you're recording is treat the head, the camera, like the head of a person. The most ideal, does everyone mind if I just get up? The most ideal situation if you're going to record, in my opinion, if you're just starting out, is to take a mannequin or a dummy, remove the head and replace it with a camera. Because whatever you do to the camera is the person. So this recording, if I were to put my hand, underneath the camera, then when a viewer is watching that in VR, then that hand penetrates that. That's not something you would normally experience in traditional film. If I pick up the camera and move it around to try to change the location of the scene, in VR the viewer is getting jerked around. Now it doesn't seem like a big issue, but in VR it really is, because if the liquids in your inner ear aren't moving and matching what your brain is seeing as your environmental situation, then that disconnect between the two causes nausea. So there's a whole new problem with VR. A whole new problem with VR is that you can actually make people sick, you can cause cognitive development issues. There's a lot of really risky issues with VR. So just creating environments that shock people or transition them very rapidly can have negative side effects. So again, it's still very new, but I would say the best thing to do is to treat any 360 camera as if it was the actual viewer. So the way you move the camera is very similar to if there was a person there that you're moving around.
Yeah. A shift as well is that if you think about it, you're shooting the entire space. So your point of view, what you typically do on a set is that you have everything staged, set up your cameras, double camera, get the angles you need. But in this case, it sees everything. They'll see everybody behind the set. So,
brand logos everywhere.
Yeah.
It makes plane flying overhead. It really makes it difficult in some cases.
True, but what's interesting too is that it also still fundamentally you need a good narrative, you need a good story. That hasn't changed. So your script and just planning for the fact that yes, that camera's going to see everything. You build it in, and you can actually create quite the experience.
Yeah. So Chris sent me a TED Talk by Chris Milk,
Cool.
who, I don't know, it's a good TED Talk, so everyone should watch it. But I remember one thing he said that like composition in VR, like it's not about like how people come in and out of the frame or how they look in the frame.
Yeah.
It's how people move around in the scene, right? Like,
He's on set as a whole new meaning.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So it's like where
Yeah.
people are looking, where people are pointing. Like if they move, from one area to the other, you'll tend to follow them. And so if you want to drive people's attention somewhere, you got to like actually have things move.
Or ambisonic sound, being able to use audio triggers to control or suggest the viewer's gaze. That's the biggest challenge with 360 is, as a filmographer, you don't have as much control over what the viewer is looking at.
Yeah.
You can direct them or create activity.
But there are microphones that actually can pick up all the different elements in
Yeah.
the sphere.
Yeah, and like that ambisonic 360 sound.
Exactly.
But what I mean is, in a standard film, you get to kind of control what the viewer is watching. Whereas in 360, sometimes you really want them to see what's in front of them, but they're in a swivel chair and they're just enjoying the 360 experience, and they miss the point of what that particular scene has. But what instead we've done is just accept the reality that if they miss something, they can kind of pause and rewind it.
If I can add a bit to that, so as an experiment right now, I'm working with Robert Bateman, and I'm actually taking his artwork and shooting natural landscapes as well, and merging them. And we're taking elements of his art and animating it, bringing it to life, and adding spatial audio. So what we're doing is that visually and auditorily, you're compelled to look in a certain direction. So even if you're wanting to look and do your own thing, that's your own choice, but there's a lot of things that are going to be pulling you towards certain areas that has activity. So if you're going to gather the narrative in that format.
So that's part of the story.
It's part of the story. Yeah. So
Yeah,
we
you have to
guide
integrate it into your
in
story.
that realm. Yeah.
Yeah, sound design and spatial audio is sound design in general is more important than ever in this medium.
Yeah.
So realistically, you have to really get more familiar with the subconscious processes of the viewer, because those are the triggers that you're going to have to be more reliant on for doing things like influencing their decision for where they want to look and having them believe it was their choice.
So before we get too much further, I'd like to pause for a second and see who's in the room and whether this topic is sort of the appropriate thing to be talking about, since we kind of are how many people make films or are filmmakers?
I do an elbow because I got
Elbow.
do my best.
How many people work more in VR, or computer games, or kind of
That's more like a full hand, yeah. A
okay.
little bit of everything.
And just some shout outs if anyone wants, to throw out other domains or what you'd be interested in hearing. Are there audio people in the room? There's audio people in the room.
That's kind of one issue that I found with some of these recordings is the camera is the microphone as well. So maybe a remote audio pickup as well to get some of you guys' voices. I hope it comes well across the videos.
You could, as I mentioned, there's I can't remember the name. There's a Ford capsule microphone that picks up directional. It is a cardioid, I believe. So it picks up in each direction, and then I've been looking into it. There's some really, I'm not a specialist, but I know there's a bunch of different processes you go through, so that spatially you can hear exactly what it's.
I think when staying underwater,
I think these guys know more than I do.
Well, actually, here's something really interesting. Facebook has a free back-end audio, spatial audio program, and you use something like Reaper as the front door. You can actually merge the two. And
And they use their own format.
Yeah.
I started off in radio school and transitioned halfway through to TV. So I'm one of those people who believe that audio and video and traditional sound. We all know, people working know how valuable that is. I've been to Oculus Connect 2014, 2015, 2016. I had takeaways from all those. The 2014 was, holy crap, there was something in the room. It's like, wow, we feel like pioneers, innovators. You guys are all under that same sort of umbrella. This is really the beginning of a very long part of history. This is the beginning of the last medium we'll ever see, as people are saying about last medium we'll ever experience, which is virtual reality, 360.
I'd say you're all early adopters.
You're all early adopters.
of technology.
And and the takeaway from 2015 was presence. That if you guys have heard that word before, it's been used a lot. That deals with, there are basically in virtual reality, there's 3 of our senses that's utilized, like touch. We're saying like audio, video, like sorry, eyes, ears, and touch. We're 360, yeah, all that stuff. 360 really only can successfully utilize 2 of those.
Right.
360.
Oh, well, if it's just the video,
Just the,
Yeah.
you can't integrate audio,
You can't
sound,
integrate.
haptic feedback, and proprioception.
if I'm seeing it effectively, we use. I'm assuming that would be right.
I've been pushing the boundaries a
say,
little bit
you
more
know
to
the
experiment to see what you
There's a
can
lot
do.
of these like, you know,
Full body haptic suit.
full body suits or like contraptions.
Yeah, but
on-
beyond the haptics and.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody, at Emily Crime, they're saying on the science, this was actually 32 senses
Total?
total. I don't know what those are.
The more we can hijack, the more immersive the experience. So
Exactly,
yeah.
it's going to be a continuation.
Hijack them, yeah, there you go.
So yeah, I'm kind of following down the lines of what you guys are talking about right now, working with something that's free, like Blender, an open source program with the interaction and putting the scenes together, but I'm not quite put together the video and the interaction with the scene yet, so I was just wondering if you guys got any further with that. Like, do you have a 3D software emulation, spatial type of emulation that you're working with? Can you
Yeah,
make
sure.
those videos?
One that we use right now is basically through Adobe and Skybox. So Skybox was just paired with Adobe, so you can use.
Trust Adobe.
What's that?
Trust Adobe to come up with the stuff you need, right?
Yeah, well, it's actually awesome with After Effects,
Yeah.
and it integrates quite cleanly. So you can create some high level productions using their entire suite. That's currently what we're using. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
And then pair that with the audio side of Facebook and Reaper, and then now you've got something that's creating a well-rounded out production.
But if you're coming from Blender, which is a 3D software, right? Then Unity is kind of the go-to for prototyping and actually distributing a lot of VR applications. Unity can create applications for Oculus and Vive and all across the board. So
And for those of you that are interested in doing the similar effect but with 360 content, round.me is the one that does where you take several spatial captures in an environment and then stitch it together into a 3D mapped environment, and mainly for real estate. Then there's SeekBeak, that's one that's mainly for image capture, again, gaze-based navigation. You look at various things and it triggers it and can either teleport you from one image to another or activate other things, like bring you to a website, open a video. So when you're in virtual reality, you're interacting by gaze-based navigation and you're able to either teleport around or interact with the environment. The third one is VR 360 and they use video. So you can put together a storyline or a film where you get to choose your own adventure. So if you're in a car chase and you're in the backseat of the car in VR, because that's how 360 is, based on where you look, it could determine the direction the car goes, and then it loads up the next 360 video seamlessly, and all of a sudden the car goes the direction you chose. And that's being done with 360 video, and it's kind of blending the worlds of website navigation and video games, because they're kind of all coming together right now, which is really fun.
Just kind of to put on that, looking at a concept of actually where you can inhabit the body of the characters that you're watching, and you can hear what they're thinking as well as you hear what they're saying, and you can select who you follow as they leave the scene, and then that's going to take you on a whole new type of adventure. What's interesting is the rewatch value alone on a production like that, especially when you break down the numbers. But yeah, it's been playing with a couple pieces like that and experimenting. You know, what you're talking about is in terms of sight, and you create the individual as an artifact, and you can transport into them. But when the moment they leave that scene, whoever you're with, you're stuck with them to the next part. So it's there's a lot of experimental and really fun pieces that are going to be coming. And I mean, if you've ever watched your favorite film and always wondered what your character's thinking, now you can find out.
even more so because you become that person in
Yeah.
VR. It's almost like those thoughts are implanted into your own head. So when you're having narration during an experience, it often kind of feels like it's your own voice in your own head because that's exactly what you're experiencing.
And for those people who are thinking about creating content in 360 space, I think what they're talking about is incredibly valuable. My takeaway from the 2016 Oculus conference was the analytics they were getting from the Gear VR for the last 2 years. On the back end, I was talking to the head of video and education department, and what they're saying is on the back end, what they're seeing is that 70% of people watching content on the Gear VR are watching 360 content. 30% are games, which is opposite of what they thought. What they're finding is that the value, the word value they're using of 360 content was actually lower than games. So that means the watchability. You can go back and that type of content where you can go back and watch. Like we didn't listen to everything this person was thinking in the room. So that's adding value. Years ago, you couldn't put text up. They said that takes away, but now finding it actually adds value.
Yeah.
So as storytellers, you're trying to tell a story, but also from trying to get your show watch, you need to think about the value you're adding to the content. Text, there's a whole bunch of stuff that adds to it because in some kind of weird way, statistically, 360 is in a little bit of a tiny combat in terms of people's attention or what they're watching in Gear VR. Games are still winning because people go back and they'll play that one game they spent $5 on and keep going back and playing that game over and over again. So to find that 360 content isn't being, they'll watch maybe 2 or 3 times and that's it.
I have a piece on that too. I'm wondering, this has been an interesting discussion even too in the giant screen industry, is the devaluation of content. We're flooded and inundated with so much that it's hard to find quality content. And also the interest level for paying for quality content has changed as well, which can affect those stats and those numbers because, you know, you have everybody going out and doing it. The issue with that is they're not trained, or they don't necessarily have the ability to come up with productions that are well thought out in terms of narrative and everything else, spatial, auditory, you name it.
Basically, you should just expect that for the next 5 years, 90% of the 360 video content that's going to be available is going to be nauseating, unpleasant, lots of motion, very blurry. It may not function, it may not be stitched properly. There's going to be a large variety of problems.
Well, let's give an example of that too.
Get into the
Like,
habit of paying for quality content from someone who's streaming the videos to determine.
So I was at Jason's place, and I just wanted to play with the new PlayStation 4 VR headset, and I put it on, and we're going diving, and I'm like, oh great! Before we even hit the bloody water, the camera's on a mount, and as they pick it up, it's moving around something fierce, and I'm fully in it. So it was one of those like, oh, this is really bad. Like my brain started interpreting this as like, oh, you're gonna feel nauseous now.
And you're familiar with seeing it all.
Yeah.
So
I was just like,
oh,
jeez. So like before we even got to the actual water side, you know, we're going through this entire experience, and I guess like the way that they filmed it, they assume that you're going to use your phone and you're just going to turn and look around. Sure, but when you put it into the VR headset side, you have to shoot a production for a headset. If you don't, I mean, you're going to have some serious issues. Yeah, you can shoot it for your phone, but yeah.
Basically, 360 imaging has been around for like 40 years.
Yeah.
But being able to watch those in VR is relatively new. And when you're watching an image that's 360 in VR, it's perfectly stable and everything is perfectly fine. But as soon as you're recording video in 360, if it doesn't follow this very basic guideline for content for viewing in VR, then it becomes a very unpleasant experience. So what the companies out there that have done that have 360 content is they just kind of suddenly said, oh, this is all VR content. Even though it's really not, it's 360. It's fantastic to look on your phone, but to immerse yourself in the environment is a completely different experience. So even the best 360 videos by the biggest companies out there, like Discovery Channel and History Channel, those videos are great in 360. They're terrible in VR. Just the way they follow standard cinematic filming rules, and they become very unpleasant VR experiences. So people need to learn the distinction between 360 images, 360 video, and 360 VR videos, which are 360 content that's been that's met basic criteria for it to be viewed in VR. And a lot of it has to do with how scenes change from one location to another, or how the cameras move. And right now, those rules are not being followed because nobody really knows about it. So most of the content that's coming out right now is frankly quite terrible in VR.
A lot of
but
branding
it's getting better.
opportunities, building up your own production company.
I think a lot of people that are creating content don't have a VR headset to test it on.
Yeah. And I would say 90% of the VR companies I interact with, they often say like, oh, I can't wait for you to come and visit. And I'm like, well, let's meet up in VR. And they're like, well, how would we do that? And I'm like, well, what are you using? Because we live stream in 360 for almost all the platforms. So regardless of what VR device you have, you could telepresence to another moment in time and be there in VR. But even the people that are running VR companies don't use VR for non-gaming applications. It's either film or gaming. It's a fantastic telecommunications tool as well. It's going to take a lot for
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say that identifies two major things, because we're at a film festival, so I'd like to do that too. The takeaway from being at film festivals, what are the two biggest factors in deciding what you're going to shoot is how it's going to be distributed and how much money you have. So your budget
Yep.
and where it's going. Because